The whole camp grumbled against their counselors and the director. The campers said to them, "Would that we had died during the campfire, as we sat with ashes blowing in our faces. But you have led us all day through a desert of heat and boring activities. We are hungry, and we're tired, and we're going to die. All of us, from boredom and from hunger." Then the Lord said to the counselors and the director, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the campers are to go out and gather their daily portion. Thus I will test them, to see whether they follow my instructions or not. They shall have their fill of bread, so that you may know that I am the Lord your God." Last week I was chaplain at Camp Mushamash, and it was full of complainers. Each day there were lots of meals, 3 meals, usually offering seconds and sometimes thirds, and on top of that, 2 snacks. If you were hungry, it was not from a lack of bread. Every morning, campers and staff were able to gather their daily portion in another way. Cabin groups would come to the chapel for an introduction to the day's theme, and it is here that God rained manna, bread, food from heaven. There was a prayer, the one that we just did, a Bible story, some reflective questions, a couple of songs, and a storybook with pictures telling a modern version of God's story to the children. Here, in the hearing of God's story and reflecting on it, was the food to take into the day, as much food as one could possibly gather. One day, the story from the Bible was the feeding of the 5,000, the story we heard here in church last week. The modern-day parable for the day was this book, Stone Soup. Now, many of you will have heard variations of this story. The story, in essence, is the story of a stranger coming into a community and not being welcomed. The stranger or strangers set about starting a fire in the center of the town, on which they put a pot and boil water. And when the water is boiled, they add 3 large stones, or something, to the water. As the villagers watch from behind closed doors, they are curious and eventually venture out to see what is going on. Eventually, the villagers get excited and they bring items to add to the soup: carrots, potatoes, onions, spices, until the soup pot is full and it smells absolutely delicious. Together, the villagers, with the stranger, create a hearty soup and then eat, with more than enough soup for everyone and some left over. This book tells the story a little differently. The story is set up with 3 monks arriving at a village. They notice the inhospitality of its residents and their suspicion and paranoia of each other. The monks start the soup routine by saying, "These people do not know happiness." This phrase is the focus of the whole tale. The tale is not about the soup. The Exodus story, the feeding of the 5,000, is not about the food. The Exodus story, which includes the people grumbling in the wilderness, is told, reenacted during the festival of Passover. It is a time when people make a great feast, gather together and recount their songs and their stories to remember who they are, with the intent of once remembering, going to live as God's people in the world, free, and having eaten their fill, to go and live God's covenant, to love God and to love their neighbor. The Christ story, which includes the people grumbling about bread and wanting signs and miracles, is told and is reenacted during our communion meal. It's a time when we gather for a great feast, and we recount our songs and our stories, our history, so that we might remember who we are, with the intent of once remembering, going to live as God's people in the world. Free, having eaten our fill to go and live by loving God and loving neighbor. It's not about the soup. It's not about the bread. As Paul writes, it is about acquiring a fresh spiritual way of thinking. One is to be a new person created in God's image, whose justice and holiness are born of truth. The villagers, in the book I read to the campers, grow together as they bring items for the soup. Neighbors who have not acknowledged each other for decades rub shoulders as they stare into the soup pot. As they become less alienated from each other and laugh and work side by side, their paranoia and suspicion of each other dissipates. In the end, the villagers gathered together. They brought rice and steamed buns. They brought lychee nuts and sweet cakes. They brought tea to drink, and they lit lanterns. Everyone sat down to eat. They had not been together for a feast like this as long as any one of them could remember. After the banquet, they sat and told stories. They sang songs and they celebrated long into the night. Then they unlocked their doors and took the monks into their homes and gave them very comfortable places to sleep. You see, together, they remembered who they were. It started with working side by side, sharing a meal, and the real miracle, the real food, was the telling of the stories and singing songs. Things that one can only do and accomplish with others. There were campers who, for whatever reason, wouldn't engage. They went from one activity to another, one meal to the next, looking for fun, wanting to be entertained, to be handed a good time without giving it any energy. And they complained that they were homesick. They were hungry. They were thirsty, and they were searching. They were stuck in a loop of sorts, looking for the next experience. Maybe it would be more satisfying. I suspect some of us have spent at least part of our lives chasing the next best thing, being hungry, wanting to be entertained, perhaps pacified, given a shock of emotion so that we would feel something, anything. Then there were the campers who ate plenty. They ate up the stories. They told their own stories. They asked questions. They reflected. They applied the lessons and principles that they learned within their cabin groups. Then they were ready to hear more stories. God's stories, other people's stories, and to tell their own. There were lots of stories and lots of songs. And the more that the campers listened, the more stories there were to tell. Stories bred stories. And the stories reminded them of who they were, God's vision of who they are, and who they will be and can be. The stories were filling, and in them there was honey. Honey that dripped of contentment and happiness. Over the next month, we will hear from God's word stories about bread. Jesus identifies himself this morning saying, I am the bread of life. But it's not about the bread, per se. It is, as the story of stone soup ends, the villagers say to the monks, with the gifts you have given, we will always have plenty. You have shown us that sharing makes us all the richer. To think, to be happy, is as simple as making stone soup. At the end of the story, after a round of applause, I asked the campers to ask themselves, I wonder what it is that you have to share. What do you have to share? What kind of bread do you have to feed a hungry and a hurting world? With these seeds planted, with these breadcrumbs left to chew on, the gathered community prayed. Now, during the prayer, this is a place for you, the campers, but for you now too, to call out what it is that you to share. So listen for the cue, for the place where you can call out those things that you have to share. Let us pray. God, fill our imaginations and hearts with wonder at all that you have made and with how awesome you are. Today we offer to you those things that we have to share.
Use family. Forgiveness.
Kindness.
Time. Visitors.
God, please multiply our gifts. Help us to share what we have, our time, our talents, our resources. Wonderful are your works, O God. Thanks be to you. Amen. Having been fed, and in anticipation of being fed, satisfied and full of happiness, let us offer our final, "May this be so," in the singing of the Amen chorus. We did this at camp at the closing of every service, and there was a line that went with the theme of the day. So the chorus is, Amen, Amen. So we're going to sing that chorus once, and then the second verse is, Blessed are we, and then we'll sing the Amen chorus again. Okay, follow my lead. Amen. Amen.